Now, our next speaker brings with her a tremendous wealth of knowledge around autoimmunity, both professionally and personally. After enduring a tumultuous 4-year journey with MS, Boroch put herself into remission through diet and lifestyle changes and has been symptom-free for 22 years. Yeah. After healing herself from MS, it became clear to Anne that her mission and her passion was to educate others about how to heal. Her journey led her to become a nutritional consultant, a naturopath, educator, award-winning author, and inspirational speaker who helps other people realize that the body has an innate intelligence to heal itself. She firmly believes that with choice and diligence, each of us has the power to overcome any challenge, and she has come all the way from New York to share her story, her knowledge, and to talk about how to beat the Incurable label. Please welcome a true inspiration, Anne Boroch.
Thank you. Thank you, Kim, for that warm welcome. And I also wanted to say thank you to CSNNAA. Did I get the acronym right? And just for the staff and the volunteers, this is a wonderful conference. Thank you for inviting me. And I'm so glad to talk to all of you. It fills my heart to see so many practitioners getting into this because I've been doing this for 18 years. And I felt like a lone wolf out there. And so it's wonderful to see more turnout and holistic schools and alternative practitioners. It really does feed my soul. So I'm going to have 2 doohickeys here. I want to be able to point to things here. And the way I really like to start my presentation is to tell you my story. Why? Because I was the perfect specimen for why autoimmune can happen, disease in general. And it really did start from a very young age. I was a sugar addict. I know there was a couple in and out in the group out there. And I have some really good tips for you on that, actually. So I was a sugar addict all my life. I probably ate more sugar than 10 teenagers put together. I had multiple courses of antibiotics, colds, flus, sinuses, ear infections. I had tubes in my ears. I was immune to penicillin by the time I was 9. Basically then I had a mouthful of silver amalgam fillings. I rotted every tooth out. And I was just toxic. I was type A. I was a perfectionist. A lot of stress, had a lot of family dynamics. And really my first health crisis came when I was about 19. I had mono, Epstein-Barr, kissing disease, no big deal, you rest. But I didn't get better. And I literally, within a span of a year, I saw 8 different specialists, I took over 20 different medications, and I was dying just from the side effects of these drugs. And my mother was, she didn't know what to do, she was hopeless. And at that time I came across a medical intuitive, said that, your daughter's loaded with Candida. I thought, what is that, the name of a song? I didn't know what that was. And basically a week later, I just love how the universe works, Dr. William Crook was the second doctor to really popularize Candida. He wrote The Yeast Connection. Dr. Orion Trust was the first one who wrote Missing Diagnosis. And that book fell in my lap, don't ask me how. And I took this questionnaire and I started to cry. I had every symptom. It fit what this medical intuitive said, and I literally followed that protocol for a year. I did an anti-candida diet, and I took a pharmaceutical called Nilstat. It's a form of nystatin, and I took it for a year. I was so sick that it took me that long to get back in my skin. So, I was uneducated. I thought, okay, great, I feel good, and I'm ready to tear it up again. So my crazy ways started to come back in. I started to go back on sugar, type A, and at 24, I was in a restaurant with a friend, and to you, it looked like I had a conscious epileptic attack. I couldn't breathe, swallow, move, and I started to spasm and tremor uncontrollably. And my friend's like, I'm gonna call 911. I said, no, just take me home. So I just thought, I don't know what happened. I just said, but I figured if I could sleep it off. And I woke up the next day, and I never really left that world for 4 years. Within a 2-week span of neurological testing, I sat across from the physician. He said, great news is you don't have cancer. The bad news is you have multiple sclerosis. You're going to be in a wheelchair, and you have chemotherapy to work with. You're 24 years old. I'm in shock. I was completely debilitated. And I looked at my mother, and I said, if I take this chemo, I'm going to die. I said, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I said, get me out of here because I'm going to figure it out a different way. It's not going to be this way. And that took a lot of courage. You know, I was 24 years old. This is in the early 90s. This wasn't around, and I'm her only child. So it took a lot of courage for both her and I to make that decision. And I was not a lightweight, benign case of MS. I had those immune response attacks daily for the next 8 months. It was difficult for me to breathe, swallow, chew. I had a blurry vision. I had extreme fatigue. I had numbness, spasticity. And I was petrified to be in my body because I felt like a paraplegic. So I would literally just lie on the couch when my mother went to work, and every day I could get myself to the bathroom, and that was about it. So what little research was out there, and I'm talking little, my intuition said, go back to Candida. And I got an anti-Candida diet. I had a great dentist, which is going to come in next, that prescribed me nystatin, which is the pill form antifungal. And I stayed on that for a couple years. And there was one book by Judy Graham called Multiple Sclerosis. And she had MS, her husband was a physician, and she talked about a little bit of alternative means and supplementation. And I realized that these silver amalgam fillings had to come out. I had 16, 15. And I literally took almost 3 months to do this process. I took them out without any Novocaine or anesthesia. If you put a needle in me, I would have an attack right there. So my dentist was like family. We would literally use raw orange honey under my tongue, which brings oxygen to the cells, followed up with rosemary tea, which would move the circulation. He was drenched because he didn't want to, with sweat, because he didn't want to hurt me. I remember no pain, but I would get deathly ill because even though I was somewhat protected, I was fragile and I was still taking in mercury vapors. So in hindsight, I would have delayed this process, but about 3 months into this journey and having these amalgams removed, I had a near-death experience. And it was, everything that you see, the light, the gravitational pull. Certainly it's much easier on the other side than it is here. But when I was in the ethers, there was this silence, and it was, do you want to stay or do you want to go? And the message came in very clearly. It was like, no, there's more for you to do. And I snapped back into my body, sat up like the exorcist, and let this horrendous scream. And my mom just thought I was having an attack in the afternoon, and it was just normal part of the day. And I couldn't speak, but I motioned to her to help me get and hobble. I needed to know that I could still walk. Once again, she didn't call 911. She had the courage for me to keep going the path that I wanted to go. It was in that moment that I realized that the body was incredible, and there was no gray for me. I was either going to conquer this, or I wanted out of this body. And so my mindset and my belief system started to change. And in that 3-year process, I'm going to just condense it now, is that what really got me well was I did an anti-Candida diet, I took an antifungal, I took minimal supplementation. I didn't really know what I was doing, but it was basically a B complex, fish oil, vitamin C and E, evening primrose oil. And the emotional layers, I started to get better. I moved up to Northern California as I became more ambulatory. But if I had like a test, because I went back to school and changed my major to psychology, if I had too much stress, I would have another attack. So I realized that as I was getting stronger, and I went to Northern California because the particulates in Los Angeles were too intense. So I figured there was more oxygen up there to help me heal faster. And at 27, I'm 3 years into this, I go through a suicide attempt. Now, it's a movie in itself. It's too long to talk about, but I want to tell you why this is important. I had to deal with emotional, mental layers because I had a tough childhood. I was a perfectionist. I had suppressed anger, suppressed emotions. This is key in autoimmunity, key. And there was a phobic energy that came up for me of swallowing, and it's all in my book, in the Healing MS book. But it was a gift. It was the catalyst to making me purge my emotional layers. And so here I'm dealing with MS, and I'm not able to eat, so I'm dwindling away. And when I tried to take my life, I really didn't want to go because I was really pretty much a Taoist at that time, and I thought, oh shit, I got to come back and do this again. So I was like, and I didn't want out. I just didn't know how to get through the pain, and I had no money, so I had to go into county hospital in lockdown for 13 days in 2 halfway houses. And let me tell you, losing your mental faculties is 1,000 times worse than losing your physical. And what I witnessed in there, what I experienced, was unbelievable. But it was part of my shamanic journey to realize how I could help others later. And this was the critical part, is I had been 2.5 months in the system. all I had were the clothes on my back. I never knew if I'd see reality again, never knew if I'd date again, have money, have a house, anything that you take for granted. I didn't know if I was going to have that again. And one day I sat on the edge of the bed and I'd really cut myself off spiritually because I felt so betrayed. I was like, I have a good heart, I have a good soul, I don't understand why I have this. You know, that saying how, you know, God puts as much as you can handle on your plate, and I'm like the buffet and I'm dying. Cut me some slack here. And so it was at that moment where one morning, the counselors there will have you experience maltreatment if you're depressed. If they make you angry, you will fight for your life. But if you're sad, you will take your life. So I went through a lot of maltreatment. And one day I sat on the edge of the bed, and my French was much stronger. I said, God, I might be really messed up right now, but I don't deserve this treatment anymore. That sounds very simple, but it was the most powerful thing that shifted my DNA. I realized in that moment that your worth, your existence, your carnal body is proof of your worth. That everything else that you do in life is gravy. It didn't matter how much mommy, daddy loved me, what I owned, what I drove, whether I was healthy or not. If I was in this carnal body, I was worth being here. And I never did feel worthy. That's why I was a perfectionist. And so it was like when I made that realization, it was like all the hard work I had done for 4 years, it was like lock and key in my DNA, and I was out of there in 2.5 weeks. I found a holistic healer who basically did some hypnosis and got rid of the phobic energy of swallowing. And literally he said, I don't know what you've done, but you don't have MS anymore. You did some clearing of the, let's say, the right and left hemisphere of the brain and cleaned up some cobwebs, and I never looked back. I looked back for maybe a couple years after that because I kept fooling myself. Could I really conquer this? Could I really do it? But you know, what that story really meant to me was a few things. One, I'm here to talk to you. Two, it gave me the great pleasure to know that it was a shamanic journey and knowing I was to be a healer. And mainly, it's to realize that what you believe changes your DNA. I'm going to get into the particulars, but if you want to know the shortcut, you work with people on their belief systems, and you ask them. The 2 questions I ask, do you believe you can heal? If the answer is no, I have to work with the tools and how to get them there. You can be skeptical, you can be afraid. There are no magic bullets, there's no magic food, there's no magic drugs. And the second question is, do you feel you're worth your existence? If it's no, you cannot heal, period. So then you give them the tools, you inspire people, you build them up to be able to do that, okay? All right, so enough about me, let's get to some other things here. Sorry, let me just get a sip here. What causes autoimmune disease? Everything that's been mentioned today, we've had some great speakers here. And so basically everything from infections to diet to spiritual disconnection, pharmaceuticals, environmental toxicity, and everybody is sliced up differently. So you'll have someone that has more emotional components and more physiological components, but you must look at the whole individual. My first session is 2 hours. I listen to you. I listen to your story. That's 90% of what I need. The rest is easy, because you'll get to know that as you start working your protocols, what that really means. So let's break it down. An unhealthy diet. I don't need to get into this, you know this much, but the reality is that, these kind of things that you're eating on a regular basis, this is not food. This is junk. These are chemicals. And it amazes me, still in Western medicine, and I'm not anti-Western. We need drugs, we need surgery, but we need to do much more than crisis management. We need to do prevention and education. So when they say to me, I'll have someone that comes in with Crohn's disease, okay, ulcerative colitis, and the top head at Cedars-Sinai, someone will say, what you eat has nothing to do with your condition. I want to flip out and scream. Food is chemistry. It's chemistry. So you must address that because it's the most important component when you start to deal with the physical body. Why is food making us sick? It's deficient. It looks beautiful. Lots of color. It's fat. It's 3 times the size it should be. But it's deficient. You have to eat 5 to 10 times what your grandparents ate to get that same nutritional value. And the other thing is that it's toxic. We have never lived in such a place and time where we've had so many chemicals. and sprayed into our food, it's unbelievable to me. You know, genetically modified seeds and foods, Monsanto, it's patented as an antibiotic. So you wonder why you have so much dysbiosis. You're constantly eating stuff that's wiping out the good bacteria. We're having other gene mutations, gene markers are turning off and on. I mean, talk about immune dysregulation. The body's confused today. Genetically modified foods, I covered that. Environmental toxicity, I won't spend a lot about this. Josh talked about that, but this is certainly something that you want to pay attention to. Some brief recommendations that I mentioned. Air purifiers, I love the ionic foot baths. People think it's all hokey pokey, it's not. You don't need the ones that change color. I sell the graphite rods, but these work with positive and negative ions to move the circulation to help get the inflammation out of the body. Water systems, obviously non-toxic cleaning products, and eat. This is the only way I know how to deal with food today. If I looked at all the studies, I'd have you all crying. You'd eat nothing, you'd be a breatharian, okay? The thing is, eat small amounts and variety. It's the best way I know how to keep up with the toxic world until we go back to organic, farming practices in the way that it needs to be. We're not there, so that's really the key within that. The digestive tract, this is my baby. This is really a model that I set up 18 years ago. I knew that this was the issue of how the body broke down. So it's everything from antibiotic overuse to steroids and medications and stress and chemo, poor diet. What this brings on is maldigestion, malabsorption, dysbiosis, which is an imbalance to good and bad bacteria. And we're not just going to talk about Candida today. This is my baby, but it's all infections. Elimination problems. Who doesn't talk about poop if you're a nutritionist? Do you know what's amazing to me? I will have the most chronic cases, and they will come in and they will have seen everybody Western and alternative, and they don't poop once a day. I said, how can that be? If you don't have daily bowel elimination, you're not going to get somebody well. Please focus on that initially. Leaky gut, Lorraine just talked a lot about that. What this does is it overwhelms and compromises the liver function. You start to have the blood-brain barrier, basically leaky brain, leaky gut, leaky lungs. And that ultimately, over time, with chronicity, leads to disease. All of them. Cancer, autoimmune. You can't have cancer without having fungus. What I feel is that the Candida toxins, the mycotoxins, allow cancer viruses to thrive, and then it's whether you're going to have cancer or autoimmune. And today, I used to just see people with one autoimmune. I've seen thousands of clients in 18 years of practice. Now people are coming in with 2 to 3 autoimmune and cancer. Talk about me having to do my homework. It's overload right now. So the gut microbiome, it makes me so excited that science is catching up to this. I am thrilled because that means so many of you and so many people that you're going to work with will heal. And you're going to get the kudos from the physicians that are going to work with you or hopefully adjacent with you to be able to refer to you so that we're getting results, because this is really how you do it. So you want that, 75, 80% good to bad bacteria. You have 10 times more bacteria in the GI tract than human cells. Your genes are outnumbered 100 to 1 to your microbial genes. And you wonder why people are depressed and anxious. Well, guess where the majority of your neurotransmitters are made? In the gut. In the gut. So if you've had dysbiosis, and that's going to come in with, I don't just see people because they go, oh, I've got a little eczema. Usually it's eczema, depression, fatigue. It's a multitude of symptoms. And this is really where I feel the root of all disease begins. Antibiotics. It's done immense good, but we've abused it. That's why we're having to use fecal transplants. We have antibiotic-resistant strains now where you can take antibiotics and it's not going to do anything and you're not going to make it. We're at the end of the era of antibiotics. And so what happens is this cycle. Antibiotics create a situation in the body that make it a banquet for yeast, and yeast are a banquet for viruses, which give rise to second bacterial infections, which are treated with more antibiotics, which creates more yeast, which then attracts more virus, creating a degenerative cycle. And this is how you end up falling apart. This is where the immune tolerance comes in, okay? And all of you have these slides. And this is the point about the GMOs. It's basically an antibiotic. So you're constantly, we're all trying to do the best we can, but we are taking in these GMOs because I'm sure through cross-contamination. So this is just the cycle itself. You take the antibiotics, it destroys the good stuff, the yeast starts to overgrow. The damage, really, when you talk about why disease happens, it's the mycotoxins. There's about 79 byproducts that come off yeast and fungus. This is what does the damage. Destroys tissues, organs, creates immune confusion. And I hope that we're right around science catching up with this. And I dug up some scientific slides. We're not going to spend a lot on this. I just want to show you how well the science, I'm so excited the science is finally getting there. So this just recognizes that leaky gut and autoimmunity, that the permeability and the loss of the intestinal barrier function is necessary to develop autoimmunity. It's a given. It's a given when I see somebody. Could multiple sclerosis begin in the gut? Absolutely. Among many conditions, not just MS. I don't mean to sound curt about this, but I'm going to tell you that when I get into more of the treatments and things, or the ways that you can work with someone, is there's so many givens. You really don't need to do a lot of testing. Now, I'm a medical intuitive, so I have that ability. I use a really cool, groovy quantum physics software program that reads the body, assesses the body in 3 minutes. But even if you're not using things such as that or tuning in, there's so many givens that when someone walks in, it's a given that they have dysbiosis. You don't need to test for that. It's whether it's mild, moderate, or severe. If it's severe, it's going to be autoimmune or chronic condition. So you want to get right into it. And we'll go into more detail about that. This is just more about the gut microbiome and how this is related to autoimmune diseases. This is where the next revolution, I hope, catches up. This is what I've been. I told here's a really cool thing, is that Dr. Crook, who was my hero with the yeast connection, I got well. I became colleagues with him. He wrote me as a success story in his last book. He was going to write the foreword to my first book, and before he passed on, I promised I would carry on his work and take it to the next level. That's pretty cool. So I am doing that, and there's some other things that I want to add to that, but this is where I feel the next revolution is. It's about the microbiome. It's the fungal part of your GI tract and all this bacteria. Yes, we need to look at bacteria. Yes, we need to look at parasites and viruses. I would deal with that. When I'm working with the protocol, I'm cleaning up all the critters, as I call them. But the one that's most grossly ignored is the microbiome. Candida, I'm pretty sure you all know about this, but it basically it's a ubiquitous single-celled organism, bless you, and it lives primarily everywhere in the body. That's why it's in prime position to get out of balance. Your physician will say, well, everybody has Candida. Yes, but it's an overgrowth state. And because of antibiotics and poor diet and steroids, et cetera, it's so easy to get out of balance. And it's like, it can stem back, like for me. It's someone having ear infections and I'm taking antibiotics. Well, if they keep fueling it with sugars and high stress, then over 20 years, you've walked into an autoimmune condition or some health challenge. It's the history that brings you there. It's not one dose of Rice Krispies, okay? The mycotoxins, as I said, are the most damaging thing. The byproducts like acetaldehyde and gliotoxin, these are neurotoxins. This is what destroys tissues and organs. So it's really not so much the critter itself, it's the waste products that does the damage. You cannot, in MS particularly, Epstein-Barr, the monovirus, it goes hand in hand. You cannot have that virus without having yeast, in my mind. That's what brings that virus out of dormancy. Right there, you already have a given then, if someone walks in with that. This is a really cool thing, is that they found that a specific protein in the hyphal walls of yeast closely resembles gluten. So what happens is when you have a celiac, you take them off gluten, and you wonder why they're still not better. Deal with the Candida. And sometimes you find they don't have celiac to begin with. You've got to start to find that, not that you want to put them on gluten, but you're going to find that overall, did they improve? And maybe they didn't really have celiac in the first place. So it's a very interesting connection there. This is still what I want science to catch up to. There is no definitive test for me at this point about testing positive for yeast. There's blood, there's stool, there's spit test. Parasites in yeast are very evasive. They hide in tissues and organs. Most people can come out negative, and they're loaded with it. And I'm not exaggerating. My estimate is 1 out of 2 people that walk in your office, and really 1 out of 1 have yeast overgrowth. So deal with it. Because if you deal with these 4 factors, quality sleep, you can't get somebody well if you're not dealing with quality sleep, dysbiosis, mainly Candida. If there's anemia, hypoglycemia, you can't get someone well, period. Any blood sugar imbalances, you're just not going to get results. And they have to poop daily. Don't forget about that. Okay. The emerging world of the fungal microbiome. So this is just another science article that's talking about the magnitude, because even though it's a smaller portion of the bacteria, it is such an important component, and hopefully science will find out more about that. This is very interesting. As of November 2015, only 269 articles of more than 6,000 research on the microbiome even mention the word fungus. We're missing something. And 30 days of trying to knock out yeast is not going to cut it. I'll get into that in a minute. It's not even going to scratch the surface. This is just about the microbiome, gut-brain axis. So we talked about, as the gut's leaky, so are all the other barriers, the brain. They found fungus in the cerebral spinal fluid with those with MS. And I want this to keep going because we're going to see so much more success with these clients that have this. This is interesting. This was a study where they took athlete's foot cream and found that it instructed the stem cells in the brain to repair nerve damage in those with MS. People don't even realize that Tecfidera is one of the MS drugs that they use now. That's a chemical called dimethyl fumarate. It was used in the UK or in Europe as a fungicide for furniture to prevent it from molding. So they're giving this drug, but why are we not making the connection of fungus yet? I don't understand it. So when you're really talking about autoimmune, it's immune confusion. And I'm not going to get into the science because I'm not a biochemist of Th1, Th2, but what I'm going to say to you is that these will go like this. There's no one set, because you're seeing science where they'll say, oh, these conditions are Th1 and these are Th2. You fluctuate. So as much as you try to lock in certain supplements to stay away from and some to do, it doesn't work that way. There's a wave and the rhythm until you start to get rid of the inflammation, the infection. So I don't think you can just put certain conditions in a box, is what I'm saying. Okay? But if I give you the foundationals in how to get someone well, you're going to see success. Stress. Who doesn't experience stress? If we didn't have some, you wouldn't get out of bed, but it's the overload and how you download. People don't download. I'm originally from Los Angeles. Oh my God, it's how fast can you go? And it's, work, B, do. That was me. Even once I got well, I wanted to save the planet. That cost me a hysterectomy 3 years ago, all that stress. And I realized, whoa, okay, there's balance to it. I love what I do, but I need to pace myself. And so it's so important that when you're dealing with stress is how do you neutralize it? Because it increases cortisol, which then inflames the body. Insomnia is usually brought on, and that is the most important thing. You must sleep. So if someone has insomnia, please work with everything you can do. Sometimes I have had tough cases where I've had to have short-term pharmaceuticals for a doctor to prescribe because I couldn't get the results that I needed. It's not usually the case, but they must sleep. From 10 to 2, you make your physiological repairs. From 2 to 6, you make psychological. So I tell people at least be horizontal by 10:30. If you have to shave off time, get up earlier. Okay? Chronic stress will override nutrition and supplements. Absolutely. You can do everything you want, but if you don't manage that stress, you're not going to get the results, and that's why people come in, well, it's not working. Well, what are you doing with your stress? Why are you in this toxic relationship, etc. The HPA axis, this basically affects the gut microbiota, and so you have more inflammation response. How do we crumble psychologically? There's a study that says that 75% of what each of you think is negative or fear-based. So right there, we need to work on being much more mindful and conscious and using mind mechanics in how we change what we think about. What you fear most is what you are. And there's so many wonderful tools now, and we're going to get into that. I love this book by Candace Pert. It's Stored Emotions and how that basically brings on disease. I lived this, and so when I saw these books come out, I was so happy. particularly Bruce Lipton. I think it was amazing because that's really what I did, was I changed my beliefs, which then changes your DNA with time. And you have to do all the variables. There is no magic bullet. Let me be clear on this. Denial, resistance, low self-esteem, perfectionism, this is the key for autoimmune. Not feeling good enough, overcompensating, taking on too much, not setting healthy boundaries. Hello, how many in the room? Work on that. It took me 50 years or 45 years to not care what people thought about me. I gave so much power away. But it was my journey, and so I can talk about it at length with my clients. I can connect with them, give them tools, and let them know I'm just as human as they are. So I'm really people's cheerleader, I'm their educator. Outdated beliefs, critical. If you don't believe you can heal, then you're only going to get so far with the client. So if you're dealing with autoimmune specifically, this is heavy. This is heavy stuff. They're being told this is the end of the road, you might be in a wheelchair, et cetera, et cetera. So you need to at least ask them where they stand there and tell them how to break that down. And I give a really good thing on the Healing MS, that's really for anybody with autoimmune, but I give like checklists and how people can break down their beliefs and form new ones. Now just because you say, all right, I believe I can heal, does not mean the body changes overnight. Physical matter takes a while to catch up, so you have to do all the steps that you're doing. Good nutrition, work on your beliefs, manage your stress, detoxify the body to then catch up. Eventually then the DNA, everything will snap in, okay? The Western medical approach is really not about prevention and education, it's crisis management. The typical treatment for autoimmune disease is steroids, interferon, chemo, disease-modifying agents, immune suppressant drugs, and system-based medications. I am not anti-Western, because here's what happens. I have clients that come in with a plethora of medication. I'm not an MD, can't tell you to stop it, but as I educate them and they start to feel better, they work with their physician in getting off. But the main thing is you have to deal with where they're at psychologically. Someone will always ask, do I take this MS drug? I said, how do you feel? If you're more afraid of taking a drug and what it's going to do to your body, the answer might be no. But if you're more afraid, if you don't take the drug, if you're going to progress, it creates more stress. Take the drug. There are many ways to get to the light at the end of the tunnel. And usually as I work with clients and they feel better and they're seeing changes, they usually drift away from that. But I have many success cases where they're feeling great, but they want to stay on their Copaxone, which is an MS drug. It's great. It's the least toxic one. But the reality is you have to meet people with where they're at, not your own agenda. This is a really important point. The alternative approach, anti-Candida diet. There are so many different diets. It could be, paleo and vegan. Do you do this or that? I'm someone who I wish you could eat your brownies, okay? I'm not a monk like that. I do take care of myself. I practice what I preach. I live an expanded anti-Candida diet. But I'm not there, I don't love extremes in that sense, so I want you to know that this, to me, over the years has proved the most success to get everybody I see well. It is the baseline. And then you can add places where you want to go based on constitution. Some people can do some of the gluten-free grains, some can't. You certainly want to modify that. But the reality is that to me, this is where I've had the most success for everything I've seen, not just autoimmune. You must cleanse and detox. I mean, we've heard this all day today. What are you going to do? Because people go, well, I changed my diet and I'm taking probiotics. Do you think that's going to take care of 30, 40 years of bad habits? A probiotic is like taking a pea shooter to an iron wall to knock out fungus. Not going to do much. Quality sleep, we talked about, vitamin supplements. I think this is necessary. I certainly love food first. You must have at least the diet 60% vegetables. It's great to get the pH balance and get going, but I feel because there's so much layered chronicity within a client and what they present, you've got to use herbs and supplements and other things to get more success and also to expedite it because you have to be their cheerleader to keep them in that. The reason I have excellent compliance, by the way, I do put people on my protocol, and I'll tell you why in a minute when I break it down, is because you educate them. Once I get to know them, I connect with them, and I educate them and let them know that this is, for some, it's definitely a lifestyle change if it's autoimmune, but there's going to be expansion. But when you do that, you get them away from deprivation and diet to lifestyle change and quality aging. And when you have them shift that, they're compliant. I love techniques such as you can integrate anything you want, whatever the client's open to. You know, you can have a team. I don't feel that I'm the end all. So if they want to do acupuncture, cranial sacral, etc. As far as working with mind mechanics and beliefs, I love the tapping technique, emotional freedom technique. It's awesome. And then meditation, affirmations, prayer. Meditation to me is key. You can really accelerate healing with it. And people think they have to formally sit for 20 minutes. No, you could do 5 minutes. You could do a walking meditation where you say a one-word mantra. Go on to YouTube and even do maybe a guided. There's so many ways to do this, but if you can just bring in that stillness for a bit, and you can get that sympathetic nervous system to calm down and get in alignment with yourself, you have that much more clarity and empowerment to overcome those fear-based emotions. Exercise, breathing, yoga. If someone cannot, if they're not ambulatory, I love isometrics and breathing exercises. The ionic foot baths. You can do IV therapies. I don't do them in my office. I'm not allowed to, but sometimes that's a way to accelerate. B12 shots, cannabis, oils. The most medicinal herb on the planet is cannabis. It's been a shame that we haven't been able to get our hands on it. I don't want people smoking it, but there are oil sprays, topicals. I cannot tell you the volume of cases that I have seen who have gotten off opiates and all this junk and use cannabis oils and feel so much better. And they get the relief that they need without the toxic side effects. The anti-candida diet is just mainly that you're taking out the alcohol, sugars, corn, etc. What it does is it starves off the infection. It also helps the GI tract because you got to have it working right. You got to digest, absorb, and eliminate properly. And it allows inflammation and infection from the body to go, which then allows your immune system to communicate properly. Do you think you're going to outsmart or know enough about how your body works in your immune system? No. It knows magically what to do, so just go to the core fundamentals and you'll watch things change. Detoxification, talked a lot about that today, but basically you're like a barrel full of toxins. You must start to download and get this out of the system. So you have to make sure the channels are open. And I make sure that I don't just deal with dysbiosis and putting them on herbal antimicrobials. I have my own supplement line that I like to use the first 90 days. And basically, I work with things such as the blood sugar. I have a great formula that will knock out the sugar carb cravings very quickly. When you do that with dealing with Candida, they're gone. I get compliance really quickly. I make sure that you've got to decongest the liver, gallbladder. That's why people don't eliminate properly anyway. Kidneys, bladder, all that. You've got to deal with all that. And the anti-candida diet is not sufficient enough to detoxify the body. You have to add in the supplements and do the part of the protocol and mirror those or match those, let's say, and you must do it long enough. Autoimmune clients need to be doing more of an antifungal protocol for at least minimum of 1 to 2 years to see success. Now, that doesn't mean I don't see changes in 30 days. I do. But if you're asking me, is a 90-day program for someone with autoimmune going to knock it out? No. My Candida Cure, that's a 90-day, that will get everybody well that's not autoimmune, but not for that. You've got to do longer. All right, so let's go to, I know we're going to get low here. Do not flip out. I don't put all people on these supplements right away, and it's not even all of them. I just want to let you know this is kind of my smorgasbord of where I tend to go. The things that I love most to heal autoimmune is you've got to have fish oil, your B vitamins, D, E, and C. C increases glutathione by 50%. It's your main master antioxidant. I definitely, the initial 2-3 months, I'm working with sugar gallbladder formulas, adrenals in the gallbladder. You have to have those foundationals to be able to get everything to work. And then depending on the client, where I go, this is more of what I'll lay out for them. Sleep, I've already talked about that. One of the coolest things I want to say about sleep is that have your sleep, when you do, try to have your head facing north because the best magnet is the earth itself. And so doing so will help you balance with the magnetic field of the body. Okay? Exercise, move, breathe, do something. No matter what the limitations are, it's an easier way to get out those toxins, so you must move. I also recommend angle therapy for those that are not ambulatory. Try to get their feet where they're at least supported on a chair or wall where the feet are above the heart so that you can get some blood flow moving. Really important, twice a day. I want to give you just a quick client spotlight here of a few of my clients. This is a woman that was 51 years old. She had Crohn's disease, diverticulitis, MS. These were her symptoms. And of course, this was more detailed, but I'm just trying to give the abbreviation. But within 10 months, she was out of a wheelchair walking without a cane, off all medications. Now she runs and plays with her grandkids. This is a scleroderma case. I had someone who had scleroderma for 15 years, thyroiditis, etc. Had complete recovery after 5 years of being on my plan. Now her antibody tests and liver enzymes are completely normal. The doctor wasn't sure if he made a mistake, so he tested again. Still negative. MS case. This is one I'm working with now. This is a wonderful story of a client who I did not work with personally, been in a wheelchair for 15 years. She's now, I think, Jean, you're here. How many steps is she taking now? 19 steps. Okay, she's gone from that to cane. And basically, she's done a lot of program, but she was so inspired by my work that she started with Jean, a Candida killers group, so it's a support group for those that are dealing with this issue, all autoimmune. Another scleroderma case. This was a very progressed case. So, and what happened with her is that I was able to give her life back, that she could function. She wanted to take her life. And she had more mobility, improvement, digestion, so I felt thrilled because you're not always. There is a level of progression where maybe what you do the rest of the years is you're giving them quality of life, and they're going to be around a lot longer with that. Ulcerative colitis. This is one of my favorite cases. This kid was 14 years old. I was probably 1 year into practice. He had 8 bloody diarrhea movements a day. He was this thin. And he was seeing the top guy at Cedars-Sinai in Los Angeles. He had been taking 40 Acicol pills a day. He had done 3 rounds of steroids, and they said, if you have one more flare-up, we're going to take your colon out. This kid hadn't even gone on a date. You're going to take his colon out? He saw me. I said, you're not going to like me. You're not going to be able to eat what all the other kids eat, but we're going to get you well. In 2 weeks, he had normal elimination. He was going 2 to 3 times a day with no blood in the stool. His pain, he was free of pain. His energy was improving. After 3 months, he was completely healthy. It's been over 14 years. I still get letters from his mom. He's doing great. Vitiligo, another case. This was a 9-year-old male that I dealt with, had improvement. Lupus. It's all coming to the common denominators. What I'm trying to show you is that there's hope, okay? And key points for practitioners. Do not try to solve a complex case in one visit. That's the perfectionist again, okay? Break it down, start simply, and that would be laid out more in my books and how I can guide you. I really am, one of the things I want to do, it's my goal because I want to go into more speaking and teaching, so I want to create a practitioner's course. And email me personally, it's ann@annboroch.com, because I am going to formulate that within the next 6 months because I really want to give the fundamentals so I can feel comfortable stepping out of private practice. But I don't feel a lot of testing is necessary. If you go with the foundationals and know already someone walks in with gut dysbiosis, their blood sugar's imbalanced, the liver gallbladder needs to be decongested, these are the basics and how you're going to get someone well. It's a given, not testing, it's a given. Listen to your clients. I've talked about this. Get to know them. And basically down here, do not judge them. We've all made mistakes. They may not stick to the program. I use humor, I use personal stories, I use everything I can to be able to connect with them and make them feel supported and lifted and inspired. That's how you get compliance. Address all the issues, and mainly, like I said, instill that hope. This is more for your client, what it takes to get well. And the last thing I want to say here is that your body is brilliant. We are fear-based in this country with advertising to believe you can eat a pill because you sneeze, a tick, a twitch. It's disgusting. The body's brilliant. We need to start going the other way where we inspire people to know your body does know how to heal when you give it that environment long enough. I love Bruce Lipton. This is what I was able to achieve before he wrote this book, was that I changed my beliefs to be able to change my DNA. And he said genes don't turn on and off, but are blueprints. The environment beliefs dictate your genes. Brilliant. And this is something new that he said, is Newtonian physics is incorrect. Matter only influences matter controlled by genes. Quantum physics says atoms are made out of vibrational energy. Matter influenced by energy fields and vibration rather than physical chemical. The quantum physics is more of what it is. What you think, energy, your thought patterns. This is really what dictates and really speeds up healing. And something that I say to everybody is that your body has not forgotten how to heal. You just need to clean up the environment long enough to remove infection and inflammation. Thank you. You didn't hear what we said. My pleasure. Sure.
Really ungraceful dance with the microphone. Okay, here we go. Questions? We all know we can line up right here. I'm going to see if I have, before I actually look at my iPad and see what, I have a question that I know I've come across with my own life and also, as a practitioner. The Candida diet and vegetarians or vegans.
Okay.
It's very difficult.
It is challenging.
Yeah.
I would say to you that one is it depends where the client's at. You can still get away with being vegetarian and still do an anti-Candida diet. It gets a little trickier with being a vegan, but it's possible because, as you know, most vegetarians go into being really carb heavy and they're eating more refined sugars, et cetera. So what you need to do is, I feel, supplement with amino acids, spirulina, more green foods, superfoods such as that. So it's possible. If I can get them to possibly, vegans usually are pretty hardcore, but vegetarians, if I can at least get them on some fish, possibly egg, if you can get animal protein in 3 times a week, it makes it much easier to heal because your body's over 50% protein. And it's not that you can't get it from your greens, because that's what I love most, but sometimes it depends on the person. So my thing is I educate them, see if they're willing to bend for a bit. If not, I will deal with them as a vegan and see what I can accomplish based on supplementation.
Oh, we have a lineup. Fantastic. Come on up, and then I'll get my question to Vancouver. I will get it in, I promise.
Hi again, Anne.
Hi, Kareem.
I brought a little book because I wrote stuff down so I don't forget. So I have a statement and a question.
Okay.
The statement is, as I want to tell you that you changed my life and saved my life. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, honestly, for all your hard work and all the research you've done, giving people like myself living with MS hope, knowing that there is a journey for me. And anything possible.
Do you have a Kleenex? I need Kleenex. Thank you.
I just want to know, is too much sleep, too much exercise any good? Because I try to, there's so much overload for me, because there's so much, I'm overwhelmed by all the stuff I have to do. And I have fallen, and I got back up, and I continued, and I fallen, got back up, continued, but there's so much, so I always say it's too much sleep, too much exercise, too much for someone going through any autoimmune disease.
Certainly if you're having too much sleep, that might be indicative of something that's not working. You got to kick in more the endocrine system. So that could be an issue. We'd look at that, but I'd rather you have more sleep than less. Too much exercise, yes. If it certainly fatigues you more to the point afterwards where you're not recovering, then of course you want to tame that down. Mm-hmm. I think what I want most important for you to know is that I want you to become your own best doctor. That's really what I try to do. Is I see my clients, I get them well, and I get them out. I don't keep my clients because I want you to be able to be mindful, not obsessed. If you're obsessed, you're stressing out. Mm-hmm. But if you can be more mindful of what you feel is working for you and what not, and that's really when you start to get rid of the inflammation, you get those signals. So it is much easier for you to tune into that. So I think if you're asking the question,
yes,
it probably is too much.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
All right. Oh, thank you.
Hi, thank you for such a great talk. Actually, a little bit of a personal question. Now you mentioned about like Candida, that it's really kind of at the root of, thank you, of all the, so I don't need that, of a lot of problems now in adults, obviously. But I'm wondering, my daughter is 8 and she was diagnosed with psoriasis, which is obviously an autoimmune issue. Could Candida be an issue in kids as well?
Absolutely. I think what we're seeing is because each genetic download is weaker, so that they're coming out of the chute already compromised. And particularly because we're so basically, and particularly with so many C-sections, they're not getting the microbes that they need and the good bacteria, so they're much more susceptible. Okay. And then depending on your habits and if you were breastfeeding or not, so I think, and that's the sad thing, I'm starting to see younger and younger children with autoimmune. Yeah. So yes, absolutely. Okay. I think it's something you have to look at right away in psoriasis for sure. When babies are colicky and they have the eczema, you need to look at yeast.
Okay, and is this something that your book would, like, would your book work for kids as well?
Absolutely. What you might want to do is, reduce the dose in half. You might want to do a private Skype with me or something like that,
Okay.
because the dosage would be less.
Okay.
And it depends on the case. If we're dealing with autoimmune or just,
So do you still do like personal consultations? that
I do.
could
I
contact
do.
you
I
for?
do Skypes all around the world,
Okay.
and I do in office in Manhattan.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
My pleasure.
I'm just gonna just make it a little easier. Go on, go on, go on, go on. Oh, there you go.
Hi, thank you
Hi.
for the great
Oh, my
presentation.
pleasure.
I hope to be this gentleman who was here, I don't know, a couple of minutes ago
Kareem.
in a year. I do have a question about heavy metal detox. Do you recommend doing chelation therapy?
That's a good point. I think when you're definitely starting to dealing with dysbiosis and my normal detoxification, you're dealing with pulling heavy metals out. But if you're asking me more IV chelation, I don't like that for multiple sclerosis and any neurological condition. For whatever reason, I feel like it's enhanced and progressed the symptoms. So yes, I do address it. And so more in the second and third month, it's coming in because I'm using superfoods that'll have spirulina and chlorella and stuff like that. Okay. So do I stage it? It's all in one to me, because when you start to do the foundationals of detoxification, it's happening in that process. Because people are normally eating more greens, and there's parsley, and there's this and that, so it's happening, and yes, there's a concentrated effort. And some, it's not that I don't use test. If I was hitting a wall, that's when I would start to go to testing. And so if they found, high levels of that in the, let's say, mercury in the urine or something like that, then maybe I might do a specific protocol.
Okay, thank you. And then one more question for cannabis oil. How would you use it? I picked up a bottle from
Smoke
US.
it.
No, the oil. I'm talking about the oil.
Okay.
I picked it up from US.
Is it legal here yet? Just kinda? Oh, hurry. I have so many Canadian clients, I need it to be legal.
So how would you use it? I have a bottle, I just don't know what to do with it.
Well, I couldn't tell you, I can't prescribe in essence like that, but what you want to do is deal with the dispensary that does it. You want to find good grades, and in the United States, we have places that more specialize in that, and I like the oil sprays. Because if you ingest, you don't want to do edibles, they put trans fats and sugars, and you don't want to do that. And when you ingest it, it stays in the system a lot longer. So if you start to get a bad buzz, you can't get off that trip for 24 hours or more. So I much prefer, and if you can't use oil sprays, then vaporize, because at least you're not getting the tars if you're smoking it. Okay. But the quantity, that would be, do the minute amount and then build from there. Because the difference is there's CBD oils that won't make you feel buzzy, and some that have more THC that will. And the difference is, some people who have severe neuropathy, et cetera, may not get the relief from the CBDs. So they might need the THC at night when they're going to bed, and they can handle with that little bit of that buzz.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay, thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure,
Thank you.
my pleasure.
I just have an information question that you could
Sure.
maybe help. If anyone wants to have your services, you live in the United States, how do you deal with Canadian or other clients from other places?
I Skype all around the world. So I have half my clients are international now, because my books are in foreign languages, so I love it. I get to reach everybody. Thank you. Oh, thank you, my pleasure. Hi.
This is a personal question, but I'm sure people will learn from it. So I pretty much healed my own psoriasis. I don't know how I did it.
Good for you. Unless you better beliefs.
But there's a few things. So I just have those two dots.
Okay.
So there's two questions that I have. One is, it started only about 4 years ago. And then I know there's an emotional part of it, but also too, can it come back? So I don't know how it started. Some of the stuff that you said today, I pretty much had all of it when I was a teen.
Okay.
Some things that you talked about. So I'm thinking maybe that just over time. And can it come back?
So the question is more, can autoimmune go into remission and come back? Absolutely.
Okay.
So that's why you have to have better lifestyle habits. Mm-hmm. And so, if you're connecting also with emotion, very much so. I mean, you're already making that connection. Is there any anger?
I think from...
yeah, I'm picking up a lot of anger. So I'd say that deal with that. And you suppress. Not now, but suppress in that sense, because I'm sorry, my intuition started to kick in for you. So address those components, and also at the same time is that now you've learned some of the fundamentals, because you don't want to go through reoccurrence. Every time you put something to bed and it comes back more virulently. That's how I went from having Candida to then MS. So the thing is that I would say address those core components of what you've learned and taken in from everybody today so that you can put it to bed permanently. The key that you're looking for is first to obviously feel better, then you want to put it into remission, and then remission forever. I don't use those words, cure. I have to be careful, as you know, but the reality is I don't come from that approach anyway, because if you're going to have to give me 10 years symptom-free before I say you're probably never going to look back. This is not something I take that's lightweight. It doesn't happen in 30 days. So for you, obviously there's certain elements, and how it went into remission by itself is a very interesting component. So
I start with apple cider vinegar
love
first
it.
thing in the morning. That
Perfect.
was in
It changes your
November.
pH. It gets rid of Candida.
Yeah.
So there you go. That's one
So-
thing you did.
Yeah, I was doing a yoga integrative therapy program.
Breathing,
where I was
oxygen,
breathing. Well, I'm a yoga
circulation.
teacher too.
There you go.
So
And just centering yourself then.
yeah, so I just wanted to
Okay.
yeah, okay, that was my question. It was
Okay.
if it can come back. That's
Good. Put it to bed.
All right. Thank you very much for the
My
talk.
pleasure.
This question from Vancouver, just to get that in there for them. What do you use for an antifungal product? Do you use a variety?
Good question. I have a supplement line, a private line that I use from Apex Energetics. So I have more my line that I use the first few months, but I have people that are all over that will never get my stuff. I'm really groovy that way. If I can find you something that's less expensive and I think it's quality, I'm all about that. So I have Candida ABX, which is my formula, but I also like many others. Candida Cleanse by Rainbow Light, and there's other ones. So some people in other countries can't get those combination formulas. I like the synergy of combination formulas. If they can't, then I might go to something like Powder Arco or caprylic acid or oregano oil. But when I find you get, in my formula, I like to make it more synergistic and also lighten the intensity so it doesn't destroy this. You know, if you throw everything in the kitchen sink, it's going to kill it, but you feel miserable going through it. So you want to buffer that a bit. So I definitely use a variety. I'm not as crazy saying to you, every month you must switch because it's not going to work. You're going to become immune. I was on nice statin for 2.5 years. It worked. So I do like variety because it's out there, but I might keep someone on 3-4 months before I switch to another formula. Was there a second question?
Yeah, great, there is. Do viruses have a role on our gut? Do they affect our normal flora?
Absolutely. I mean, the thing is that we have viruses all the time. It's where they stay in dormancy. So once again, that goes back to dysbiosis. And for me, the most important factor to keep viruses in check is dealing with Candida. It's still the most grossly ignored infection. And so I can't say enough that don't waste your time trying to figure all these things out when I can make it very easy for you. Just deal with that, and you will find so much more success.
I just wanted to, we have a couple minutes, so I just wanted to ask if you thought that, you talked about the mycobiome versus the microbiome, and do you think that that will be garnering a lot more attention in the next few years, or is that going to, be a slow, sluggish process?
I hope not. I'm in the works of something really cool, and hopefully that published book will be out next year and the world will know about it.
Good.
So it's hopefully my plight.
Okay, we look forward to that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anne, honestly. It was good.
My pleasure. Thank you.